I'm a big behavioral person, which is like anything can be trained. Even like, man, he has such a great personality. It's like, what is personality? Well, personality is probably 170 individual skills. And so if one of them is when someone walks in the room, you stand up, I can train that. If it means that like when someone's talking, I need you to nod your head like this when the other person talks, I can train that. And if we just had to make a checklist, it's just because it's hard to describe doesn't mean that's impossible to teach.
That's interesting. Okay, so the spark, the thing that causes somebody to finally get into it, can be translated into a set of behaviors.
Totally.
And then if you get the set of behaviors, then you're going to be in a position to go.
Right.
All right. So what are some of the behaviors that people are doing now that you think are destructive, and what do we replace them with?
A lot of it is inaction. Right, like I'd love to say like all these people are failing and this is the thing that would fix it. Is like most people just don't take action to begin with, and so I think a lot of it's between their ears. To your point, which is why I talk a lot about fear of failure, being the actual enemy rather than failure itself, and really even the idea that people are like, I'm afraid of failing. No one's afraid of failing. People are afraid of other people's judgment about their failure. If you could fail in private and no one would know, like when you play video games and you lose the level, you're not embarrassed. Right? Like you lose.
Interesting. So I've heard you say that before, and I've always agreed.
Yeah.
But I do think that there is something that will chip away at somebody. So it comes down to, what do you build your self-esteem around? This was the big breakthrough in my life, was the day that I realized I got to choose what I built my self-esteem around. And I had been building my self-esteem around being smart. And so I was constantly putting myself in a position where I could prove to myself and others that I was smart. Now I began to realize we are both the shout and the echo. And I wish it weren't so. I wish we weren't the echo. And what I mean by that is you're what you do, but you're also what other people say about what you do. And as a just unimaginably social creature, it is baked so deeply into our DNA.
Right.
I don't think there's any escaping that. So you come into, whether it's playing video games or trying to build a business or whatever, with a lifetime of being both the shout and the echo. Yeah. So you have a sense of who you are. You've mapped your self-esteem. And now if part of your self-esteem is, I'm good at this thing. Yeah. After a while, like you're way happier to fail in private because nobody sees you. So there's no new echo reinforcing what an asshole you are. But I don't think you have unlimited failures on your side before you go, fuck, maybe I'm really not good at this thing. And if your self-esteem is about being good at that thing, then it really will begin to erode you. Do you have, assuming I'm right about that, do you have a thing that you encourage people to build their self-esteem around to avoid the kind of traps that will make them afraid of failure?
I think it would be around the traits, which can be evidenced by the things you do, which I think is probably where you made your shift. This is me assuming here, but like it's not about being intelligent, but about being like hardworking, right? It's like if you build your identity around that trait, then you can always do more of it. Like you can always work harder. You can always put extra reps in, et cetera. And I think if people build that trait as their identity and where they get their self-esteem from, then it becomes a self-reinforcing cycle, but they're the ones who are in control of it rather than the outcome. And so that way it's like all of the variables of your identity and your self-confidence are under your control, which I think is cool.
Which is very cool. So have you identified the trait smorgasbord that people have at their ready to be thoughtful about? So for instance, being smart would be a trait, being honorable, being honest, being hardworking. What should people be building their self-esteem around? What traits? Is there one? Is there a magic handful?
I think the ability to delay gratification. And from a behavioral perspective, it's being able to continue to act on a longer extinguish curve, which is like if I knock on a door. So if I knock on a door and nothing happens, how many more times do I knock on the door before someone opens? So like if you fire someone and they're like, wait, I want my job, right? You can measure what someone's curve on how many times they will try again on something before they move on and give up. Right. And so the longer you can make that curve on someone, the more likely they will hit the jackpot, which then extends how many more times they'll go the next time, which is basically how addiction works too. But you can also use the same concept for good things. So number one is being able to delay gratification. The second one is I think it's it's vision of what you actually want to do is like, where do you want to go? Because you can have somebody who works really hard at building a restaurant, like one single store, and you work really hard at building an app that's going to change the world. The amount of hours and effort that go into building an amazing restaurant and that are probably about the same, but the amount of impact is disproportionate on something that can go to gazillions of people. So I think you have to have some level of vision, and that comes from the people that you're around. The third one is having some level of drive, and I think that you can have either pull or away from drive. Pick whichever one you've got more of. I would say start with that one, and I think it does shift over time, because many entrepreneurs have away from drive in the beginning. We're afraid of failing. We're afraid of not being enough. We hate being poor, whatever your thing is. A lot of times, especially I get a lot of DMs about this. It's like, I'm trying to find my passion. I'm trying to find my purpose, my thing. And I don't think you find it. I think you make it. How do you know if you're going to like anything without trying it? You don't. And most people hate things that they suck at. And how do you stop sucking at stuff? You do stuff that you suck at a lot until you suck less, until you're eventually good. And so it's like, so you're not going to be passionate about anything that you suck at, which means that it's a fallacy of thinking.